Hey bag ladies and bag dudes, I'm Sara Lawson from So Sweetness. Thanks so much for joining me for Ask Sara, my weekly Q&A chat. Hey everyone, welcome to Ask Sara. We have a little bit different of a schedule for tonight. Usually I'm answering questions on the show, but today I am super excited because this is our book club discussion for the very first book club selection. It's called The Sewing Machine, written by Natalie Fergie. Danny's going to throw a graphic up on the screen of the book cover just so you can see, and that's Natalie in the photo on your right. So wonderful book. I'm afraid we will not be able to top this for the future selections. It was just that good. But I'm very honored to be joined tonight by my friend Tamara Carlin. Tamara and I met a few years ago at my first sewing retreat, and we met up at subsequent retreats, right? What was the other retreat?
Crafty Gemini Vanessa.
Yeah, that one was in Florida, so I'm very excited to have a co-host that is not Danny. Danny's running the controls tonight.
What the heck?
Danny will be back again next Tuesday joining me on set. But I just wanted to give a quick explanation for how we were hoping tonight would go. This is actually my very first book club. I've never been to a book club in person, and trying to figure out how to do one online. I thought it would be great for Tamara and I to have back and forth answering questions that apply to the book, but I also thought it would be really exciting if you feel like you want to join in and either answer some of the questions, or if you have a comment about any particular portion of the book that we're chatting about, feel free to type your comments, type your question or comment in the comment area on either Facebook or YouTube. Danny's going to be putting some comments up on the screen as well. Also, make sure you stay tuned for the end of the show. Vanessa said, my first book club, I saw some other comments, other first-time book clubbers, so very excited. At the end of the show, I'll be showing the free pattern that goes along with this month's book club selection. It's called the Clydebank Tote. Tamara also made one. She brought hers. We're going to be discussing the bags. I'll be announcing the month 2 selection of the book club at the very end, so jam-packed show tonight. I'm really excited. And again, feel free to leave your comments or questions in the comment box on either Facebook or YouTube as well. All right, so let's jump right in. We have a lot of things to talk about in regards to this book. So my first question was, what were the 4 main time frames in the book? Tamara, what did you...
Well, we have 1911 with Jean as the sewing machine tester in the factory in Clydebank. We jump to 1954 with Kathleen, who inherits the machine with her daughter Connie. And then we jump to 1980 with Ruth and with Connie. And then 2016 with Fred.
Yeah, so a lot of time covered in the book. I had some comments from people either via email or on Facebook that there were a lot of characters to keep track of and a lot of jumping back and forth in time frame, but I think it was well worth it having to keep track of those characters and the times, because in the end it's like almost like an Easter egg, together. Right? Yeah, It all comes together in the end. All right, so my next question was, which character did you like best and why? So I'm going to lead off with that one. So my favorite character wasn't one of the main characters, but it was sort of a supporting character, and that was Ellen. And you meet Ellen in her interactions with Fred. And I felt like I really identified with Ellen because she was a very creative person. She was making the jewelry out of the sewing machine parts. And the reason that I identified with Ellen, because when Fred first met her, I feel like she was almost a little bit standoffish, but the more he was able to interact with her, he got to know her. Yeah, he got to know her. So he first met her, I believe, at the trunk sale. Is that what? Yeah. Mm-hmm. He first met Ellen at the trunk sale. I see Holly says, I love the way she changed characters. I usually get lost, but I cared about each of these people, so they stayed in my head easier. Yes, definitely. But the reason that I really identified with Ellen is because Fred had to have a whole handful of interactions with her, and then I felt like she started to warm up to him, and I feel like I'm kind of that way in real life. Not that I don't warm up to people, but I feel like I really need to talk to people like a whole multitude of times before I feel like I'm comfortable around them and I can sort of open up a little bit more. And I feel like that is kind of a disadvantage for me because a lot of people decide what they think of you when they first meet you, but
And
because
kind of move on.
right, and they move on, exactly. But I feel like because I need so long to get to warm up to someone, I miss my chance with a lot of people, which kind of makes me sad. But then I know that the people that I'm friends with, like Tamara, it's even more special to me, if that makes
Takes
sense.
time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So who did you think was your favorite character?
I kind of thought the main character was the sewing machine because it was kind of a sign of stability and how it influenced everybody's life. But if I were to say who was my favorite human character in the book, it probably would be Fred, because he kind of overcame, adversity and kind of had to reinvent himself. And I think my favorite part about Fred was that instead of throwing the sewing machine away, he did research and learned how to use it. So that, and for all the bag dudes that are out there, men can sew too. My first memory of sewing was when I was 9 years old, watching my construction worker dad draft a pattern and create a canvas cover for our outside air conditioning unit. And I thought, I want to do that. I was fascinated with that. And men can sew, and they should. So we're happy to have all the bag dudes in our
Yes,
group
definitely.
too, for sure, right?
Yeah, for sure. I see Kathy. Sorry. Kathy said, I like to think Fred and Ellen would move forward together in their lives with the sewing machine being their continued bond. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Next question is, share a favorite quote from the book and why did this quote stand out to you? So I know you have a really good one. Why don't you lead off with that?
I liked a quote from Kathleen when Kathleen was talking to her daughter Connie about the torn sheets being salvaged and saved into rags and how they repurposed and recycled everything. In our society here in the United States, everything is disposable and replaceable. And going through this book, I think we could all learn from that, with everything being recycled and repurposed. And Kathleen had said to Connie, or she was talking, and when talking about salvaging the torn sheets into the pillowcases and rags, it said her thrift was ingrained and she would no more discard usable cloth than she could catch an unnecessary bus. And I thought that was kind of humorous about the bus part, but they repurposed everything. So that's really good. I think that's really good. And you keep our scraps for quilts, so.
Yeah, that's true. Margaret says, I was interested in the idea that some women thought a treadle machine was not ladylike. I had never heard that before, and I loved how the book brought out the idea that a sewing machine was part of the family lore. Yeah, exactly. And I like what you said about the repurposing. My grandmother's the same way, and I almost feel bad about thinking about different situations where I've reacted to the kids maybe having a broken toy or something wasn't working or not as new, and
they just say, get a new one.
Yeah, and I've said that myself, it's fine, we'll just get a new one, but maybe that shouldn't be my first reaction. It's a bad experience to be teaching them because that's...
No, it's our society. It's out of the convenience, I think,
that's
too.
true. I actually had two favorite quotes from the book. So the first one was in one of the chapters regarding Jean. So Jean said, I slow down and make it last until the siren sounds. We have to wind thread onto the bobbin to do the testing, and we're only supposed to put a few yards on. But when it's the last machine, I fill it right up so the new owner has plenty to get her started. And then I try to imagine who that person might be. So I think that's a really great thing. Creating something like how Jean was assembling this, doing her part to assemble the sewing machine and wondering what that new owner would be like and just imagining what they would make on the sewing machine. Kathy says, can you imagine trying to sew and while cranking the side crank of the machine? I can't imagine it. I know several of you watching have used one before, but maybe I should try one, get a hold of one, or find someone who has one just so I can experience it at least once. I had another, Gail says, I learned how to sew on a treadle singer 60 years ago. So I had another quote that I really liked a lot, and it was in one of the chapters with Connie and her mother, Kathleen. And this is the quote. The machine came to life again, and the needle pounded up and down through the cloth. The fact that she was sewing so quickly meant only one thing. The bobbin was almost empty. She spun the handle faster and faster in the hope of outrunning the last few inches of thread and somehow making it stretch for half a yard, but sure enough, a hand's length from the end of the fabric, the needle began to punch a row of useless holes without catching the thread underneath. So I think we've all been there, right?
Yeah, and in my fabric sewing pattern groups, we call that bobbin chicken, trying to get it, hoping it's going to make it to the end before you run out of thread.
I like that. And it always happens in the most difficult part of the pattern, like in the end where you're sewing like the whole bag together, like the front to the side panel or something like that.
Or a corner that you can't pull it out.
Or a corner
change
and
it.
you're like hunched over your machine and trying to drag it through and you're like, oh gosh, I got to the end. Yeah, and then you realize you have no thread in there. So it's like, oh darn.
You lost
That's
it,
the
bobbin
worst.
chicken.
All right. So my next question is, which character experienced the most change over the course of the story, and which character you wish had changed more? So I felt like, to me, Fred experienced the most change in the story. Fred had so many, I guess, different life events going on at the same time. So he was without work. He lost his job. His girlfriend Sam came to visit him, broke up with him. Yeah, and left him while she was there. So he was feeling really down about himself over that. The next thing that happened, his grandfather passed away, so he was at his grandparents' house going through all their things, trying to get everything clean and organized. I think he was thinking seriously that he would be selling the house. And then
finding out his family wasn't who he thought his family was.
Oh, that too. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
That was huge. Had to adjust to that as well.
But the sewing machine was a huge thing for him. He didn't know how to sew. He found the sewing machine. He learned how to sew. First of all, he had to get it in working order, and then he was making projects for the boys next door and finding this new hobby, or I don't want to say love, because I'm not sure he was quite at that love stage where we are with our sewing, but I feel like he went through the most changes, and the character which I felt like I wished had changed more was Donald. So Donald started off the story strong, I felt. In the beginning, Donald was advocating for the 6 women that had lost their jobs at the sewing machine factory, and he wanted the other workers to go on strike in support of these women. So I thought that was really magnificent, but I felt like Donald started to go, for me, downhill after that because, first off, he volunteered to go to war when he didn't have to.
And he never talked to her about it. He just said, I'm going,
right.
And he left.
Yeah, he never discussed
Left
it with
her with
Jean.
the baby.
Exactly. And then when he came back, through no fault of his own, but with his injury, it sort of put him in a different place where Jean sort of had to pick everything up again. So she's back. You would think she would get some relief, and she's sort of thrown back into a different place where she has to
get a job.
She had to get a job and sort of be the support, both monetarily and emotionally, and physically for the family. So that's what I thought about those two characters. What about you?
I think I was pretty much on the same boat with that.
Yeah.
I think Fred really went through a lot of adversity, and you kept rooting for him, and all I kept thinking is, please don't throw the machine away. Please don't throw the machine away.
Yeah.
And it was just exciting to see him learn how to use it.
Yeah, Shirley also agreed. I got angry the way Donald did enlist. Yeah, that really made me upset when I read that portion. Rolanda says Donald was impulsive.
And he just said, I have to do it, but he didn't give Jean a reason why he had to do it.
That's
just
true.
Said, I have
That's
to do
true.
it. And she's like, what about us? What about your family?
Right. Yeah, for me, that was pretty disappointing. So it's interesting that we both thought that about the male characters in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to kind of pause for a second. If you've watched the show before, you know that we normally ask the bag ladies and bag dudes to, stand proud, let us know in the comments. And so I thought that was a great point to stop and do that. So whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I'd like to invite you now to go ahead and type either bag lady or bag dude in the comments. I really appreciate every single person who watches the shows and participates in the comments on the shows and in the Facebook group. It's a major reason why I wanted to do the book club. I thought it would be a really great thing for everyone to participate in as a community. And I got a lot of emails and saw also some comments in the Facebook group that a lot of people had picked up reading books after a pause of very many years. I think I saw a comment yesterday,
few.
15 years, hadn't read a book. So I thought that was really great, and to hear the great feedback, people are really loving this book. It really made me glad that we have the book club and we have a great free project to show you at the end. So again, thanks for watching and being part of the community. So let's jump back in, have some more questions, and we have some more fun things to talk about. Tamara, why do you think Jean wrapped the secret message around the bobbin? So we later learn that Kathleen finds Jean's secret message, which reads, "We have to leave. There's no work here for Donald. Wish us luck, signed Jean."
I kind of struggled with this one. At first, I thought it was a warning to whoever was finding it, how there was a possibility between the strike and her leaving that perhaps she was warning the person that maybe, these machines would not be made. And then when she got out her well-worn Sunday school Bible and she knew exactly where she needed to look, and she talked about the Ecclesiastes verse, a time to rend, which means tear, a time to sow, S-E-W, a time to be silent, and a time to speak. And that got me thinking, okay, maybe she's trying to make a statement. And then later in the book, she said her message would probably be read once, if at all, then discarded without a second thought, but she didn't care. It was enough for her to have made the statement. So I kind of went full circle and went back to she's trying to make a statement. And leaving at 18, at that time, not married, leaving her family, leaving her job, I thought that was a really brave thing and probably was a terrifying thing at the same time. And she had no idea the profound effect that leaving that message, what it had, because when Kathleen found it later, she was going through the tough time with her first husband leaving her and leaving her penniless. And she said, if Kathleen could take a risk and make a change, then I can too. So it's a shame that Jean really didn't know what a profound positive effect that her putting that note in the bobbin.
Yeah, I really like what you said, about making the change and being brave enough to make the first steps, I guess you could say. So yeah, I thought that was a great answer. I had a hard time with that question too. I think my initial thought was she was sort of leaving the message to kind of put her thoughts out there in the world, not that she was expecting someone to answer, but kind of like as almost a support, like a request for support. Like she didn't have her mother anymore. Her and her father were not on really good speaking terms, and she just needed some kind of support, I felt like, besides Donald. And I think that was her way of trying to do that by leaving the message inside the sewing machine.
And I thought too, when she got the Bible out, I thought maybe she's wanting the person to pray for her and for her safety and her well-being with leaving.
Yeah, I like that.
I thought that might be a possibility too.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so another question that I had is, Kathleen writes all of her sewing tasks in a notebook, as well as how much she was paid and who it was for. Why do you think that is? And so my initial thought was, and Connie kind of touched on this in the book, Kathleen's daughter Connie, but Connie thought perhaps Kathleen was doing this to say thank you. So thank you for having the sewing machine so that she could pay off debts and earn money after her first husband, Philip Wright, ran off with the family fortune. So Kathleen didn't have her father anymore. Her husband had left her no money, and so I felt like it was almost in a form of gratitude to the sewing machine for being able to stand on her own 2 feet and support herself and support her family.
Yeah, and I thought also that it was kind of a combination of bookkeeping to show how she made her money and how to support herself, and also to kind of show a history, because when Fred finally figured out why the machine didn't work, I think there were 16 of the books.
Yeah, I didn't even know there were that many. Wow.
And when he was bringing them to Ellen to show, they're looking through, oohing and eyeing, like, look at all this. And I think it would be a great thing to do. So I took this notebook that I received as a Secret Sister gift from a retreat that I went to in the Smoky Mountains about 1.5 years ago. And Fran, if you're on, this is from you.
How does let me stop you right there. How does the Secret Sister work, real quick, for in case someone out there isn't familiar with it?
You have a person assigned to you, and you try to find out what their likes are, and every day you leave a little surprise gift for the 3 or 4 days, and then on the last day you have the reveal, and you give the last gift to the person in person, and everybody tries to figure out who has whom, and
That's
kind
really
of thing.
cool.
And it's fun. And Fran was funny because she didn't know me, so when she gave me all my items, they were just so tailor-made for me. And I said, how did you know? And she goes, well, I stalked you on Facebook. And I figured out that you like pink and that you collect antique lace. So this is what she made for me. And I write a lot of little notes and things next to my sewing machine. But I thought this notebook cover would be the absolute perfect way to kind of memorialize my sewing. So what I did was I started on this page the Clydebank tote and the fabrics that I used, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'd like to go back to when I got my machine 3.5 years ago, but I don't know how long that would probably take forever to go back.
That's
so
a lot
I
of
figured
projects.
fresh start. We'll just start with this one. So I'm excited, and I think after a couple years, it's going to be fun to go back and look through at all the different projects and fabric and things that I've made.
So maybe you'll have your 16 notebooks, just like
Well, I don't know
Kathleen
if I'll have
has.
16, but we'll see. We'll see.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you decided to do that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right, so we're going to pause again just for a second. If you enjoyed this book club discussion, or if you enjoy our live shows and our sewing tutorial videos, if you're watching on Facebook, we hope you'll hit the share button right now. Share this video with your other sewing friends on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, we hope you will subscribe just so you can be notified of our future live shows and our future videos that we post. And regardless, the likes on either channel, which is the thumbs up button, really help us out so much. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much for watching. And we're excited you're here for book club. So I have a couple more questions, and then we're going to get to the good stuff of showing off the projects. So what hurdles does Fred have to go through to learn how to sew? So we kind of touched on this before, but I think this can apply to many of us as well. And I was thinking about this earlier today. Picking up a hobby that you might not be the best at. I was listening to a podcast in the car on the way home from my riding lesson, and the person that was talking on the podcast said she had taken up surfing. She said she wasn't the best at surfing, but she wanted to pick up a hobby that was not risky as far as getting harmed in the hobby, but risky as far as not being the best, like doing something where you won't be the best. And I'm not saying that this is how we are with sewing, that we're not the best, but I feel like definitely for me, for horseback riding, I'm not the best, but it's a challenge. And I notice that that's what I like about it, because every time the day for riding lessons come along, I'm like, I could feel the adrenaline through my body. I'm like, all right, now what do I have to do today to do the best that I can? And there's another trainer, I was talking to her the other day. She's been riding since 2nd grade. She got her first horse when she was in 8th grade.
Wow.
And there's nothing that I can do to get on the same level that she's at, because she rides, when I'm there, she's riding horse after horse after horse. She's just exercising horses. So I can never be that good. And I'm not getting down on myself, but it's just a reality. Like, same thing with the podcast with the surfing. And I feel like you don't have to go out to be the best. You just have to go out to do the best you can and to learn something. And I feel like that's what Fred did when he picked up the sewing. I don't know, how do you kind of feel like?
I thought it was interesting. I was just rooting for him and saying, please don't throw it away. Please don't throw it away. And seeing that he did the research and learning how to use it, and he made me laugh out loud with some of the things. When he first sewed the bag for the kids, she said basting stitches. And, I know. And she's like, wait, there's more. And he just ran off, and he just felt like such a failure and that kind of thing. But more importantly, how he just had to keep reinventing himself and being comfortable with who he was. And he never seemed to be embarrassed about learning how to sew. I think it was because that it was such an important appliance in a home to be lucky to have one. To do, what does he make, Roman blinds and an apron, I think.
Oh, yeah,
maybe.
right, the apron.
And I was
yes,
like, wow, he's
exactly.
really getting into it. That's really cool.
Yeah, Teresa says, I also felt like Fred couldn't control so much in his life that sewing was creating things he could control. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Good point.
That is so true.
I mean, even when he found out his family wasn't really his family, he went reeling, but then he realized, you know what, they are my family. They're who
Right.
raised me,
That's true.
you know, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
Okay, so last question for tonight. The sewing machine seems to save each character when they appear to be lost. How so? Do you want to maybe talk about a couple and I'll talk about a couple?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the machine was a symbol of stability, and it seemed to influence everyone that it touched by helping them financially, you know, to get through a tough time. And like I said before, that was a really special appliance to have. It wasn't something that was disposable. It was something that you would have for a long time. And you repurposed everything with it. So it was just kind of just like having a stove or a refrigerator. It was just part of the household to, you know, continue to do.
So even though Jean was not actually really sewing in the book, it all started off with the sewing machine factory. So that's how she met Donald. It kind of, in a way, almost impacted her negatively. So she lost her job. She went off with, well, she didn't lose her job. She gave up her job. She went off with Donald to start a new life. So that's how everything got started. Kathleen found the sewing machine after her first husband ran off. And the sewing machine was a way for her to provide for her family. With Connie sort of took on the tradition of the sewing machine, and Connie found work in the hospital in the sewing room, which I thought was a really cool aspect. Cool. Did you know that the hospitals used to have like a sewing department?
No, I've been a nurse for 35 years. I did not know that.
Yeah,
that was it was very interesting, and that's how she met Ruth.
Right.
So the story you know, everything became intertwined, and I loved that about the characters.
It's so funny because when they brought Ruth in, when the author brought Ruth in, almost toward the end, I was like, wait a second. We have our characters that we're talking about, and now here's this other character. Like, what's going on?
Where are they coming from? Yeah.
Right. That was really fun.
And it all came around full circle, which was a fun way to end it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I thought it was an amazing book, and
I didn't want it to end. I don't think a lot of people did, and we're all hoping, you know, she's going to do a sequel or a prequel or whatever the heck you call them to get more into the characters, because it left you wanting more for sure.
Yeah, and my mom was reading Kate said, I'm 55 and I'm currently looking at reinventing myself, and this community is so encouraging.
Yay. Awesome,
that's awesome.
Kate.
My mom was listening to the book on Hoopla, which was an audiobook, and I know other people in the Facebook group have mentioned that the audiobook has the accent, so that got me really excited.
I want to listen to it too. I just did the Ancestry DNA test.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm. And I found out that I am 63% Scotland, England, and Wales, which I knew there was some Scotland because my mother's maiden name is McLean. But now I'm excited to take the time and learn more, and just got to add that to the list of places to go, because now I want to go to Scotland. So,
oh, that's really cool. That's awesome.
But I want to listen to the audiobook too, because I love any of the British, Scottish, Irish accents. And I remember someone saying that when they were listening to the audio, I thought how perfect they're going to have someone reading it that's got that brogue.
Yeah, right.
So that'll be fun.
Danny's always got to get his supporters in the comments. Margaret says, this is amazing, but I kind of miss Danny.
He's here.
Sherry says, what was in the envelope that Ruth dropped behind the wall? Was it her strike card? Is that what was in there? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh. Was it more
There was
than
so much
one
going
thing?
on. Let us know in the comments if you recall what was in the envelope that Ruth dropped behind the wall.
I can't remember if it was them telling her she wasn't married to Donald. Was it her birth certificate?
Oh, I don't remember. That's a good one though. Yeah, let us know in the comments. Danny's gonna be looking out for
Natalie
for your comments.
To answer that question.
I've not seen her.
Oh, that's so funny.
Well, it's midnight in Scotland, so it's certainly understandable if she's not on right now.
I wanted to mention, I know I kind of mentioned something about this on Sunday, but the author Natalie Fergie emailed me on Saturday night, and she joined the Facebook group, and I'm going to leave that on the screen, Danny. The author Natalie Fergie joined the Facebook group, which I fell off.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for writing an amazing book. Thank you for being interested in our book club discussion, and
we're so glad to have you here and to show all the love, because everyone that read this book in our group loved the book.
yeah, and I mentioned in the Facebook group too, like I'm a really big reader, but it's only once in a while that I read a book where I finish it and I'm like, well, I feel like my life has changed. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you finish it and you're just like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? What do I do with myself now? The book was so amazing, and like you don't want to leave almost. You want to stay in the world.
And it was a book that you feel like you could relate to almost every character at one point in your life, and that doesn't happen very often either.
No, it doesn't.
And because we all sew, I think it's going to make all of us look differently at our machines. Where are they going to go when we're gone? And if we get vintage machines, which I have several of, I always think about all the history behind all of them, and where did they come from? Who did they help? What did they make on them?
Exactly. Danny threw up an answer to the question we were kind of stumped on a second ago.
The strike cards. Thank you.
The strike cards for Jean and Donald. Yeah. Very interesting. Oh my gosh. So much going on with that book. All right. So that was our book club discussion. I'm looking forward to going through both Facebook and YouTube after the show's
seeing
over.
Everybody's comments.
Yeah, seeing
Me
all
too.
the comments, because I know everyone was chatting back and forth while we were talking, and we can only put so many comments up on the screen, but I look forward to reading everyone else's thoughts on different portions of the book also. So, yeah, thank you so much for...
And your opinions on answering any of the questions, too, to see if we were what we thought was different from what you thought.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a lot of fun. We still have some more to talk through, but... I have a couple things I wanted to talk about, and then we'll show off some bags. But I wanted to announce the second book for month 2. So in the middle of April, we'll be talking about our second book. There's a link to the book club blog post in the description if you want the full details of the whole 6 months of the club. But I'm only revealing one book 1 month out, so the rest of the books will be a surprise. But the second book is called The Last Runaway, and Danny's putting a graphic on the screen of the second book. And again, this is available either from your local library, Kindle, audiobook,
the Hoopla at the
Hoopla,
the library.
Physical book. So that will be our book number 2 selection, and that's an amazing book as well. Lots of mentions of sewing in that book, which is kind of what I was going for. We knew this question was going to come up.
There's a lot of them. I should probably address it after.
Kyla says, where did you get your shirt, Tamara?
It is an SVG.
Here, why don't you take
file.
the question off so we can see the shirt?
It says, I make pretty things. It's an SVG file from Katie McKinley at Thread and Grain, and you can find her on Facebook. And she's got just a ton of really fun. One whole section is all related to crafting and sewing.
Oh, cool. That's
and
really cool.
One is to moms and one is to other things too. But Katie's amazing. She's in a bunch of the different sewing groups I'm in, and I just love it.
BJ says, nice job, Tamara. Yeah, thank you. This was fun having you
thank you so
on.
much for having me. It was awesome.
Definitely. Trisha says, when is the next book starting? So you can start reading the book now. We'll be talking about it a month from now in the middle of April. So same type of thing. We'll have the discussion, show off another project and video. And it'll be the same type of format every month. And at the very end of the book club, we'll be having a contest for sewing up any of the book club projects with lots of prizes. So exciting things still to come. Michelle Graham wanted me to remind you that the Sublime Bag, or not remind you, let you know that the Sublime Bag Sew-Along is starting today in the Facebook group.
Awesome.
I've linked to that in the description of tonight's show. So after the show, you can go click on that link and check out all the details for the Sew-Along. It's several weeks, so kind of a leisurely pace. You don't need to rush and hurry up and finish your bag in one night. There's going to be prizes every week. Just like we did last year with the sew-alongs, different albums.
Tutor and
the tutor bag.
Dash,
yes,
I think.
exactly. So there's going to be albums where you can post your progress and kind of cheer each other on. Has anyone heard of The Pink Suit? It's a great read by Nicole Mary Calby would be good for the book club. I actually
gonna
haven't.
write
That
that
wasn't on my
down.
list, but I'm going to, definitely write that down.
Always looking for a good book to read.
All right, so you want to get on to the showing the projects?
Sure.
All right, so as promised, there's a new free video and PDF pattern. As soon as the show wraps up, I'm going to get that posted. We have it all in draft and ready to go after the show. So give me about 5-10 minutes after the show, and the video will be up for you online on my website, YouTube, and on Facebook. So we'll be posting it all over. It's totally free, so even if you did not read the book, you're still welcome to make the projects each month, and they're free and they're not going to go away, so they're not.
And you videoed it already.
And the video will be available. Yes, we did film the video last week, and it will be always available, so you don't have to hurry up and make the project. Whenever you have time, it'll be there for you, and it's in 2 different sizes. So I'm calling it the Clydebank Tote in honor of this book. Clydebank was the location of the Singer factory where Jean worked. And I was kind of gearing for like a vintage or a classic looking tote. And Bronwyn, who watches the show, and you might have seen Bronwyn on Facebook.
The Giver.
Bronwyn the Giver
has mentioned to me privately, oh, good, I'm glad you came out with a tote, because, you don't have a lot of that type of style of bag already. So this is the small one, and this is the large. So you can see the size difference in small and large. And
it's a pretty big difference in size.
It is.
It's nice.
I tried to photograph it so that you could tell that there was a difference. In the video, I kind of made another version. So here's one I made with a succulent fabric, and there is a recessed zipper as a top closure, and there's zipper pockets on the inside, but a relatively quick sew. Did you think it was quick? I know you made it
I
too.
thought it was good. It was a good sew.
So there's a zipper.
There's a zipper pocket.
Yep. You can see the zipper.
And you can see on all 3 of Sara's, she did the cork on both sides for the side gussets. I don't think the bottom, and it gives it nice structure.
Yeah. Why don't you show yours, and then we can explain the difference between the one you made and one of my smaller ones. Bonnie says, my friend suggested Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker. I believe that's the name. Yes, I have a huge list of sewing-related books, and I'm trying to strategically choose ones that I think will go nicely together. Different.
So this is mine. I've had this fabric forever, and I was waiting for the perfect project, for a large-scale print. And I chose to do mine with the fusible fleece because I wanted it to be a little less structured, so I could roll it up to pack to take on trips. But the nice thing is, with using the cork on the sides, and I also use the cork on the bottom, so the fabric wouldn't get as dirty if I have it on a plane or on the floor. But it's still, even with the fusible fleece, it still has good structure, I think, because of the cork. So the inside has the pockets.
I'll take those off. People love it.
And I was able...
I love your lining fabric. It's really fancy looking.
I don't even know where I got that. I've had it forever, but it's kind of like a grunge, but it's got that silver.
Yeah, it's like a pink, but it's got a silver metallic. I'm not sure if it shows up on camera.
And I love to use old metal zippers. They're one of my favorite things to use. You have to be kind of careful when you sew with them.
Have you ever broken a needle?
I have not, because I'm just very careful, and when I get to any time I have to sew over it, I'm just really slow. I turn it by hand, and as soon as I feel like it's not going to go, I'll just wiggle it a little bit. It just takes a little persistence, but I love, and then Tiffany Green, I'm going to give you a shout out. I got the zipper pull of this adorable little elephant, and then the little elephants I put on the inside on my pockets. There's 2 of them.
I know they're really small, but yeah, there's a little
small,
elephant zipper pull.
They're just too cute. They're like little elephants. And my last shout out will be to Kathleen Shedler, my dear sewing friend in Fairbanks, Alaska. She's the one who recommended this book to me, and I recommended it to Sara and God knows how many other people, and that old shampoo commercial, and so on and so on and so on. So we have a lot of people reading, a wonderful book. And thank you to Natalie Fergie for writing a wonderful book to give us something to talk about.
I'm glad you made yours with fleece, because I made a little note in the pattern, even though foam interfacing was in the supply list for the body of the bag. I made a little note in the pattern that you could also use fleece or polythermolam if you wanted like a softer bag, or like you mentioned, easier to fold and put in your
Yeah,
suitcase. Because
'cause
where
it
were you
can
going
just
that
be-
you mentioned you might take this bag?
I may be going to Turkey in September
Awesome.
with a very close friend who's been there many times with a group of 6 women, and we're going to be hopefully renting a villa in the Mediterranean
Wow.
overlooking Greece.
Oh my gosh.
Kalkan Beach. So I'm fingers crossed.
So this bag will be
Yeah.
possibly going to Turkey? That's awesome.
Yep. I wanted something I could just throw over my shoulder when we go shopping and that kind of thing.
And secure.
So-
It's got the zipper on the top,
right.
so you don't have
and
to
the
worry
2
about.
zipper pockets on the inside to keep
That's
everything
true.
safe. So yeah, it's a great pattern, great bag.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you so much for watching. Give me about 5 or 10 minutes after the show ends if you're watching live. I will get that video posted. Again, this is free. I think it was about 27 steps. Do you remember how long the pattern was? Pretty sure it was
Yeah,
around
it
there.
wasn't too many pages.
Yeah, not a super long process. There's no hardware in the pattern. Just the zippers you need
And the handles that are a little challenging to turn.
Yeah, I give you some helpful pointers in the video and in the pattern for turning the handles, so everything's really nicely finished. The opening in the lining is left through the zipper pocket, which is pretty handy for
Yes, very easy.
closing the opening in your lining because that's hidden in your zipper pocket. So I hope you enjoy the project. I really worked hard on this one, getting everything right as far as fitting together and
I can't wait to
looking
see
nice
everybody's bag. It's always
Me
so
too.
inspirational to see the same pattern, but in so many different types of fabric.
Yeah, for
and
sure. I know there's some people that feel nervous about posting photos when they finish a project. Especially if you're in the Facebook group. I hope if you decide to make the Clydebank tote, I hope you will
Please do
post your
post
photos. I don't want anyone to ever feel nervous. Of course, I understand why people do feel nervous about posting photos, but I feel like we'd be missing out on inspiration if you didn't, because it's certainly inspiring to see your take on fabric selections and how you put
And
things together.
To me, that's always the hardest thing. I probably spend more time trying to figure out the darn fabric than to sew the project. So when I see everybody else's bags, I think, oh my gosh, I love that fabric. I never would have thought to put that with that or that lining with that exterior.
For sure.
So please
I
do
totally agree.
post. It's very inspirational for all of us to see everybody's bags.
Sarah, I think you have a new moniker, like Bronwyn did.
Thank you, Sarah, the maker and the giver. I like that. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the show. Tamara, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
It was my pleasure.
This was a lot of fun.
It was.
Yes. I hope you had fun out there too. Thanks for participating. I hope you'll read the second book, The Last Runaway, and we'll see you in the middle of April for that discussion. And Danny will be here next Tuesday on the show. So if you were a little sad tonight not to see Danny,
He'll be back.
he'll be here next week. So
In the chair.
this has been Ask Sarah. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and happy sewing, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.